Hi everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Today's video is a reader's guide to Tommy and Tuppence. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. And if you are completely new here, I am a huge fan of Agatha Christie, and I have been making a reader's guide to series all about my favourite characters from all different book series. And so far there has been a reader's guide to Jack Reacher, not an Agatha Christie creation, the two other Agatha Christie series, a reader's guide to Hercule Poirot and a reader's guide to Miss Marple, and I've also made one all about Sherlock Holmes. This is the latest in that series, and I thought that as it was March Mystery Madness, it was time to look at the final series creation of Agatha Christie, Tommy and Tuppence. Now, you may be asking yourself, who are Tommy and Tuppence? But we will get to that. So in today's video, I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know about the Tommy and Tuppence series to get started with it. We're going to be covering who are Tommy and Tuppence, who else is important in this series. I'm going to be giving you a timeline overview of the books and stories. I'm going to be talking about each of the books in their publication order. We'll have a little chat about adaptations of this series, and I will of course give you my best advice on where to start with Tommy and Tuppence. So there are 5 books in this series, so hopefully we will be able to cover them all in good detail and give you a bit more of an idea of what to expect. And I do have on my new Agatha Christie t-shirt today, and I have purchased this from the Women's Prize for Fiction website, so if you are interested in their t-shirts that have authors on them, I will link that in the description box down below. It's not sponsored, I did just buy this because I love Agatha Christie. Without any further ado, let's find out all about Agatha Christie's probably least well-known creations. So, who are Tommy and Tuppence? Tommy and Tuppence are a detective duo created by Agatha Christie. Less famous than her other reoccurring characters, Marple and Poirot, they nonetheless appear in 5 books, 1 short story collection and 4 novels. So Tommy is Thomas Beresford and Tuppence is Prudence Cowley in the first book. She is Prudence Beresford from the second book onwards. So although this duo start out the series as friends, they are married for the rest of the series. These two meet as adults, having known each other previously in childhood, in one of Christie's earliest books, The Secret Adversary. This is set at the end of World War I, and unlike Christie's other protagonists, Tommy and Tuppence do essentially age in real time. There are a few discrepancies in their timeline, but this doesn't usually come from Tommy and Tuppence's age. It comes from a few of the side characters aging a little bit strangely. But if you can ignore that, their timeline is the only one of Agatha Christie's characters where her characters age. Also, unlike Agatha Christie's other detectives, Tommy and Tuppence do engage in sort of spy work. Their books can be a little bit more thrillery, a bit more spy thrillery, but they do detecting and investigating crimes as well. The couple were in their 20s in the first book and in their 70s in the final book Christie wrote, which was Poston of Fate. So to tell you a little bit more about the two characters, Tuppence is an intuitive, charismatic woman who Christie describes as having no claim to beauty, which I always think is a little bit harsh, but she does say there was character and charm in the elfin lines of her little face, with its determined chin and large, wide apart grey eyes. So that's how we're introduced to Tuppence physically, and Tommy, according to Christie, I mean, he doesn't get much better of a rap. He's described as not clever, but it's hard to blind his eyes to the facts. He's not as imaginative as Tuppence, but this is one of the things that makes them a great team, their balance of different skills. Physically, poor Tommy is described in The Secret Adversary as having slicked back red hair with a pleasantly ugly, nondescript face. Poor Tommy. But nonetheless, Christie does insist that it is the face of a gentleman and a sportsman. So there we go. The Tommy and Tuppence books certainly do begin as more light-hearted than Christie's other work. They're more sort of tongue-in-cheek thrillers. I would almost describe The Secret Adversary as a bit of a romp at times, and Partners in Crime is a lot of fun. Who else is important in the Tommy and Tuppence books? I always feel like the Tommy and Tuppence series doesn't have that many reoccurring characters. So we do have Albert, who we meet as a lift boy in The Secret Adversary. He then is an assistant in their detective agency in the second book, Partners in Crime. He helps them out again in N or M, and we finally meet him for the last time in Poston of Fate as their ageing butler. So it's impossible to talk about the Tommy and Tuppence books without mentioning that they also do make mention of 3 children, twins Deborah and Derek, and Betty, an adopted daughter. All 3 are raised by the duo and appear in the later books. We also see Mr. Carter appear twice. He is a British intelligence leader, and he gives Tommy and Tuppence work in both of the first 2 books, but doesn't appear again after that. So, in terms of timeline, the 5 books are in this case in a clear order. The order of publication is the same as their chronological order. The Secret Adversary is set in 1919, just after the First World War. Partners in Crime takes place 6 years after The Secret Adversary. N or M is set during World War II. By the Pricking of My Thumbs and Poston of Fate both take place when Tommy and Tuppence are older, with the final book seeing them retire to an old house in the country in their 70s. The first 2 full-length books are much more thriller than some of Christie's other work, but the last 2 are very much more mysteries again, and the short story collection is mysteries as well. So let's talk about the books, and I'll talk about them in order of publication. So firstly of all, we have The Secret Adversary, which I don't own a copy of other than this comic book adaptation. This is the only comic book adaptation that this series has had. The other Tommy and Tuppence books have not been adapted into this medium. The Secret Adversary was originally published in 1922, and it has Tommy and Tuppence meet up again after the war and set up a company called the Young Adventurers Limited. They basically want to hire themselves out as adventurers, and their first case sees them in search of the mysterious Jane Finn, and they're plunged into a much more dangerous and tangled web than they could have imagined. The second Tommy and Tuppence book to be published was this collection of short stories in 1929. Tommy and Tuppence take over a detective agency in this one, and in most of the stories they take on a brand new case. Christie wrote each of these as a parody of a famous fictional detective of the time, using Tommy's claim to have read every detective novel that's been published in the last 10 years as his excuse for adopting the methods of various different fictional detectives. So unfortunately for this book, some of the well-known detective authors of the time are no longer in print, so it's very hard to compare the stories that Christie wrote in the styles of these authors with the actual authors. A full list of all the detectives and authors that are impersonated in this book can be found in Charles Osborne's really comprehensive guide to all of Agatha Christie's books, which is called The Life and Crimes of Agatha Christie. But basically, the list of detectives impersonated does include Sherlock Holmes, Father Brown, and Hercule Poirot as the more famous of the bunch. The third Tommy and Tuppence book is N or M. N or M saw the return of Tommy and Tuppence in 1941 in a book set in World War II. Tommy and Tuppence are in search of an enemy agent posing as an ordinary citizen. They end up at a seaside hotel, Sans Souci, on the trail of two master spies, N and M. By the Pricking of My Thumbs is probably Tommy and Tuppence's most out-and-out mystery. This one was published in 1968, and it sees Tommy and Tuppence visiting an elderly aunt in an extremely creepy nursing home. The duo are drawn into investigating when the residents point out several mysterious happenings in Sunny Ridge. Poston of Fate was not only Tommy and Tuppence's last outing, but it was actually the final book that Christie wrote in her life when she was in her 80s. This was published in 1973, and it sees the duo move to a quiet English village, only to find secrets in their old house. Tuppence is of course drawn into dangerous investigating after becoming intrigued over a mysterious message in an old book. This is a fitting book to end Tommy and Tuppence's story, which their story really did see them age with Christie throughout the decades in which she was writing. And there's a lot more dialogue in this particular book than there is in probably any other Agatha Christie, which is mainly reflective of her age when she was writing it and the fact that by that point she was dictating her books onto tape. So let's have a little look at the adaptations there have been. The first film version of any Agatha Christie was actually a silent German film of The Secret Adversary in 1928. Its title translates as Adventures Inc. In 1953, Tommy and Tuppence had their first English adaptation on BBC Radio. Partners in Crime formed the basis of a series of half-hour episodes utilising some of the stories from the book. This starred Richard Attenborough and Sheila Sim, who were at the time appearing on stage in The Mousetrap as well. In 1984, there was a TV series called Partners in Crime with James Warwick as Tommy and Francesca Annis as Tuppence. They reprised the roles in a TV film of The Secret Adversary the following year. There was also a French adaptation in 2005 with the couple renamed Prudence and Belissaire for two films. The first one was called Mon Petit Doigt m'a dit, and that is a translation of By the Pricking of My Thumbs, and that came out in 2005. And in 2008 there followed Le Crime est notre affaire, and this was adapted from a Miss Marple book, The 450 from Paddington. Probably the most famous adaptation in the UK of this was also called Partners in Crime, and it was made by the BBC in 2015. This starred Jessica Raine as Tuppence and David Walliams as Tommy, and they adapted The Secret Adversary and N.O.M. for television. By the Breaking of My Thumbs, incidentally, has also been adapted as an episode of Agatha Christie's Marple, with the plot changed drastically to allow Miss Marple to investigate, but it does feature Tommy and Tuppence as well. Our final port of call is, where do you start with this series? As you can tell from the books, there are only 5 of them, and I would say it's well worth starting at the beginning with this series, because you do get the benefit, if you read this series in order, of watching Tommy and Tuppence age in real time, and that way you get to follow sort of their life story as it develops, as well as following the individual stories. As with all Agatha Christie's, you can read these in any order. That is the beauty of Christie. However, I do think it's well worth it with these to put in the effort to read them in the order that they came out. So that would mean reading The Secret Adversary first, followed by Partners in Crime, the short story collection, followed by N.O.M., and then saving By the Pricking of My Thumbs and Poston of Fate for last. That is the order I would recommend reading them in. Hopefully this video has given you a good idea of what to expect from the Tommy and Tuppence series by Agatha Christie, and I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed this video today, please do give it a like. Please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do have a whole playlist of Agatha Christie content. If you're interested in it, I will link that in the description down below. I will also link the playlist of all of my reader's guides in case you are interested in other crime and thriller and mystery book series. That was a reader's guide to Tommy and Tuppence. Do let me know in the comments, have you read these books? Are you a fan of Tommy and Tuppence? Do you prefer these lively investigators to Miss Marple and Poirot? If so, let me know all your opinions on the duo. I would love to hear from you. And if you haven't read this series yet, do let me know if you intend to. That's all from me today. I hope you've enjoyed the Reader's Guide to Tommy and Tuppence, and I do hope you will join me again very soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. I hope you are enjoying March Mystery Madness. Bye for now.